I read some of them. Yeah, and I'm gonna just share with you what I read. Okay, but first I'm gonna give you a timeline, and we're gonna try to do this real quick. I'm gonna explain it in more detail, but I just kind of wanted you to just kind of have a general, because a lot of stuff's been going on and it's hard to keep track. So, all right, Halloween of last year. I'm sorry, I keep looking down. That was another thing in my last video I didn't like. Okay. Halloween of last year, October 31st, 2019, Act 77 was passed by legislature, allowing no excuse mail-in ballots for the first time ever in Pennsylvania. And then fast forward to March of this year, March 27th, Act 12 was passed. I'll go into more detail about that. I just wanted to make note that Act 12 was passed around the time the lockdowns were enforced. Okay, and then we fast forward to August 7th. The League of Women Voters sued the Secretary of State. They sued them because they said that with all this mass mail-in ballots, there's nothing about a curing process, and that disenfranchises the voter. And a curing process is just basically like if something's wrong with the outer ballot or something, then you send it back to the voter. The voter fixes whatever's wrong, and then they send it back. That's the curing process, I think is an integral part. It's a very important safeguard. So yeah, the League of Women Voters sued the Secretary of State for that, even though I don't know why they waited till August when mass mail-in ballot, no excuse mail-in ballots was passed in Pennsylvania in October of 2019. But anyway, and then the end of August, beginning of September, the Secretary of State gave out two guidances. One of them was about Dropboxes and satellite county election offices, which is basically just two things where you can. Well, the Dropbox is a thing where you can just return your ballot, just like it's like no chain of custody, whatever. But anyway, I'm gonna get into that. But the satellite, so usually the county elections office, usually there's just one, but they're like, hey, we're just gonna make a couple makeshift ones. That's free. The city pays lease on that. Make that a county office. So anyway, and then September 11th, the guidance for the outer envelopes and signature analysis was given out. Mainly, you can't separate or set aside a ballot based solely on signature analysis, which we're going to get into. And then after that, the League of Women Voters voluntarily dismissed their suit. So it's like, I don't understand how that's notification or opportunity for the curing process, but they say, hey, we're not going to have a curing process, we're just going to eliminate the signature. Which is like, I don't know. Okay. So then September 14th, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, they were like, so after they sent out those guidances for the Dropboxes and the satellite county election offices, a couple days later, the Supreme Court the Pennsylvania Supreme Court was like, yeah, that's totally cool. And by the way, if you have a naked ballot or if your ballot is not enclosed in a secrecy envelope, you can totally set that aside and it can totally be void. So you can't set it aside based on signature verification, but you can set it aside if there just so happens to not be a secrecy envelope. Not like you can just throw those envelopes away like that didn't happen, right? Okay, anyway. Then October 4th of this year, the Secretary of State applied for extraordinary relief, which was, I think it's called like King's Bench jurisdiction, which basically means like in order for it to go to the Supreme Court, usually it's you go through all the other courts like the district appellate court and then Supreme Court. But she applied for the King's Bench jurisdiction, which is extraordinary relief. Which, so she applied for that October 4th, and she was like, hey, we need to reject this signature we need to totally, like, we don't need a signature verification, and I'm going to go straight to the Supreme Court and have them say we don't need it. And then, so a couple days later, the Senate President pro Temp something and the Senate Majority Leader of Pennsylvania, Republican, they did a brief of proposed intervenors. I don't know what all these words mean. I know the gist of it. I don't know exactly what they mean, but okay. But they basically objected to this King's Bench jurisdiction, which I think is important to note, because that's the senators, that's the legislature, and if the whole thing of this is yeah, so the legislature was like, hey, we don't agree with this, and the Secretary of State was just like, too bad, we go into the Supreme Court. And guess what? October 14th, the Supreme Court was like, you know what? I think that is a good question. We need to look at the wording and text of the election code. Does it authorize or require you to set aside a ballot based on signature analysis? And then October 23rd, we got our answer with the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. They say, yeah, it was the intent of the legislator and the General Assembly to not have signature analysis be, to not have like signature requirement or signature analysis even mean anything. Okay. Thanks for getting this far. So anyway, and so I just wanted to read another quote for you. This is from one of the guidances from the Secretary of State. She said, these procedures may not be, and she's talking about, like, okay, anyway, these procedures may not be inconsistent with Pennsylvania law or Department of State directives. The or was not emphasized. I emphasize the or because I think this is these non-legislative modifications which give standing, I think, to SCOTUS. Okay. How am I doing so far? Okay, so a lot of this is about, all these mail-in ballots is about the signature. And there's 2 times there's a signature analysis. But I could be wrong, feel free to fact check me. The first is when you apply for a mail-in ballot. On that application, you're supposed to sign it. Unless they make it an online application, then you don't have to sign it. Then they were like, whoop, we don't need signature verification there. We're going to sidestep that with an online application. And then, so when they do the application, they compare the application with their voter file. And then they're like, okay, it approves. I'm going to go ahead and send this ballot out to that address. And then the second time there's a signature analysis is when the voter sends the ballot back. And that's the outer envelope. And so yeah, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but for the Pennsylvania, for the outer envelopes, there's a pre-printed declaration, and There's also pre-printed on the other side your name and address. I'm not sure if that's Pennsylvania or if I'm mixing that with another state. But like the declaration is pre-printed, and then I think they give you lines to fill out everything else. And so a lot of this lawsuit is revolves around whether a signature and a signature analysis is a need and requirement for mail voting, or the other argument is that a signature or signature analysis is not needed and not required for mail voting. And so for those that that think that there is a need and requirement for signature analysis, number one was the Carter-Baker report, which said that mail voting and absentee voting has like a really high potential for fraud, and I think that was in 2005. And then Pennsylvania's own law, but I'm gonna get into that. I think they argue it doesn't. I think it does. And then Act 77, which was passed by legislature in 2019. It was the one where it was the first time no excuse mail-in ballot. I think in that act, which was passed by legislature, it showed good faith in a signature analysis, because a clause of that act or section, I don't know the terminology, was to, at the satellite county election offices, there needs to be a duplicate temporary voter registration card file. And on those registration cards, there's the signature. So, so yeah. And then Act 12 removed that. They're like, oh, you don't need that temporary file, registration file, and you don't, and on top of that, that file doesn't even mean much. Okay, here's the thing. Like, I read all this stuff, and then I just like assume that you like read what I read. And you understand it exactly how I understand it. Okay. This is such a fucking terrible long ass video. Okay.